when we are able to go home. Our scripture today is John 1, verses 1 through 16. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. The same was in the beginning with God. All things were made by him, and without him was not anything made that was made. In him was life, and the life was the light of men. And the light shineth in darkness, and the darkness comprehended it not. There was a man sent from God, whose name was John. The same came for a witness, to bear witness of the light, that all men through him might believe. He was not that light, but was sent to bear witness of that light. That was the true light, which lighteth every man that cometh into the world. He was in the world, and the world was made by him, and the world knew him not. He came unto his own, and his own received him not. But as many as received him, to them gave he power to become the sons of God, even to them that believe on his name, which were born not of blood, nor of the will of the flesh, nor of the will of man, but of God. And the Word was made flesh, and dwelt among us, and we beheld his glory, the glory as of the only begotten of the Father, full of grace and truth. John bare witness of him, and cried, saying, This was he of whom I spake. He that cometh after me is preferred before me, for he was before me. And of his fullness have all we received, and grace for grace. Amen.
Good morning. Happy Sabbath to you. About 2 years ago, from last March, in fact, I preached on this we had a talk about this very subject that we want to talk about today. But since then, I kind of learned a lot about it, a little bit more details, and a lot of you said that was way too confusing. I didn't understand it at all. So I hope to do a little bit better job of this today so that you'll understand it. Because if you were at Sabbath school this morning, Bill was talking about how we need to prove all things, and that there's lots of things in this world that we are told or is brought to us as truth, when really it's not biblical at all. And this is one of those things that we want to look at. I know that most of you here know that the 25th of December is not actually the birth of Christ. How many of you can prove it? Not very many. But I hope after today you will walk out of here being able to prove it. And so we need to know, if we believe in something, we need to know that it is biblical and we can prove it when our neighbor asks. This is not a Christmas bashing sermon or anything of that nature. It's just all about the birth of Jesus. So let's start. And before we start, I'd like to have a little prayer. And let me get this clicker out. I would like it to be silent if you don't mind. I want to pray for you, and if you would pray for me, I'd appreciate it. Amen. I just wanted to show you this little slide. It doesn't really have a whole lot to do with the sermon, but when I was preparing it, I ran across it. I thought it was interesting that this is a picture of Ninus and his mother, Beltis. Does it look kind of familiar to you about what we see today, called the mother and child? And the worship of the sun, that's what this is kind of represents, was really prevalent in Roman culture. And they celebrated and worshiped the sun feast called the Saturnalia. It was from December the 17th through the 24th. Now, what they've done is they put a little evergreen tree in the courts of the cities, and they danced around it every day for so long until the 24th, through the 24th, and then they did something unique on the 25th, and that is they laid gifts at the bottom of the feet of the tree. Does that sound familiar to us? So sometimes our culture is not exactly what we think it is or where it came from, does it? But they were celebrating the solstice, where the time frame would change and it goes into the days would start to become longer. A little bit later, after the triumph of Constantine, in the government of Rome, he assigned December 25th as a date for the celebration of the Mithraeric feast. And it was also a feast to a sun god. And then, just to kind of make unity so that there wasn't a whole lot difference between them and the Christians, he asked the Christians, or demanded that the Christians celebrate the 25th along with them, and decided to make it the day of the birth of Christ. So today, most Christians have bought into this concept of Christmas. But let's take a look to see if it's really true. Here we read in Luke 1 through 5. There were days in Herod, the king of Judea, a certain priest named Zacharias. Now, what is in yellow, I want you to take particular interest in and kind of tuck it away in the back of your mind, because we're going to talk about those things a little bit more later. Of the course of Abia. And his wife was the daughters of Aaron, and her name was Elizabeth. And it came to pass that while he executed the priest's office before God in the order of his course, and it came to pass that as soon as the days of his ministration was accomplished, he deported to his own house, and after those days his wife Elizabeth conceived. The clue given to us here is that Zacharias was of the course of Abia. Now, what is that? This is taken from Josephus' Antiquities of the Jews. It's book 7, chapter 14, paragraph 7. But David, being desirous of ordaining his son king of all the people, called together their rulers to Jerusalem with the priests and the Levites, and having first numbered the Levites, he found them to be 38,000 from 30 years old to 50, out of which he appointed 23,000 to take care of the building of the temple, and out of the same 6,000 to be judges of the people and scribes, 4,000 for porters to the house of God, and as many for singers to sing to the instruments which David had prepared, as we have said already. He divided them also into courses. And when he had separated the priests from them, he found of these priests 24 courses, 16 of the house of Eleazar, and 8 of that of Ithamar. And he had ordained that one course should minister to God 8 days, from Sabbath to Sabbath. And thus were the courses distributed by lot, in the presence of David and Zadok and Abiathar the high priest, and of all the rulers. And that course which came up first was written down as the first, and accordingly the second, and so on to the 24th. And this petition hath remained to this day. Now we can read also in 1 Chronicles 28:11 through 13. It says, King David, on God's instructions, had divided the sons of Eleazar and Ithamar, the sons of Aaron, into 24 groups, to set up a schedule by which the temple of the Lord would be staffed with priests all year round in an orderly manner. After the 24 groups of priests were established, lots were drawn to determine the sequence in which each group would serve in the temple. Here's the sequence. The one we're paying attention to here most is the one in yellow. And I'm not really sure of the pronouncing of it, but for today I'm going to call it Abijah. Is that okay? Yeah. Abijah. Now, each of the 24 courses of priests would begin and end their service in the temple of the Sabbath. On the Sabbath, a tour of duty being from 1 week from Sabbath to Sabbath. That's 2 Chronicles 28:8. They were to do this three occasions during the year. All the men of Israel were required to travel to Jerusalem for festivals of the Lord. So on these occasions, all the priests would be needed in the temple to accommodate the many sacrifices offered by the crowds. Those 3 festivals were Unleavened bread, the Pentecost, and the Tabernacles. We can find that in Deuteronomy 16:16. Now, unleavened bread is often called the Feast of Tabernacles. It's a 7-day feast, and it's on one particular date, Nisan 14. Now, don't get panicky. I'll tell you later what Nisan means. The Pentecost, that's the second one. It's a 7-week one. It's called the Feast of the Harvest by the Jews. It's 1 day after Passover's first Sabbath. So that one Sabbath has to pass, and then the Passover starts. It's the only feast that is movable, meaning it's not on the same date every year. The unleavened bread is, and the Feast of Tabernacles is always on the same date. All right. Here is Nisan. To us, it's March through April. Nisan is just like January, February, March, April. It's their terminology for their months. So Nisan is actually the first year. That is their, like to us, their January. So Nisan 1 would be New Year's Day. How do we know that? It's in Exodus 12:2 is when this was assigned to them. So the Jewish calendar begins in the spring during the month of Nisan. So the first course of priests would be that of the family of Jehoab, who would serve for the first week of Nisan, Sabbath to Sabbath. The second week would then be the responsibility of the family of Judea. The third week would be the Feast of Unleavened Bread. I'm going to catch you up with me in just a second. Don't panic. And all the priests would be present for the service for the Passover. Then the schedule would resume with the third course of priests, the fan of Harem. And by this plan, all year long, the 24 courses would be completed. Now let's get back to Zacharias. What does this have to do with Zacharias? Zacharias, as we know, was the father of John the Baptist. And in Luke 1:23, we just read it, and it came to pass that as soon as the days of his ministration were accomplished, he departed to his own house. And after those days his wife Elizabeth conceived. So, beginning with the first month Nisan in the spring, March, April, the schedule of the priest courses would result with Zacharias serving during the 10th week of the year. This is because he was a member of the course of Abijah, the 8th course. Here it shows right there, just the course of Abijah. All right, let's take a look at this. This is Nisan. That's the first, second, third, and fourth Sabbath of that. We move to April, which is I'm going to say that's Layar. Sivan. To us, it's May and June. And voila, what do we see there? We see Abijah. And who was serving that? Zacharias. Zacharias is serving during Abijah. And he was serving from the Sabbath through the 9th through the 16th. Okay, that's important to us. Because now we've established a date. Now we can say, having completed his temple service on the 3rd Sabbath of Sivan, the 16th, Zacharias returned home and soon after conceived his son John sometime between the 16th and the end of the month of Sivan. Before we move on, let's see a comparison chart slide right there. Now, I'm sorry, that's a little bit hard to see, isn't it? Or can y'all see it okay? Just wanted you to see the far left column is Hebrew calendar, the number of the months, and then the length. Now, they alternate from 30 to 29, 30, 29, 30, 29, 30, 29, all the way down until the last two, which is 30, 30 in each month. So, Luke 1:24, we read, And after those days his wife Elizabeth conceived, and hid herself 5 months, saying, Thus hath the Lord dwelt with me in the days wherein he looked on me, to take away my reproach among men. And in the 6th month the angel Gabriel was sent from God into a city of Galilee named Nazareth, to a virgin espoused to a man whose name was Joseph, of the house of David, and the virgin's name was Mary. Now, note that verse 26 refers to the 6th month to Elizabeth's pregnancy. It's not Elul, the 6th month of the calendar month. It also makes it clear in verse 24 again, and again in 36. And behold, thy cousin Elizabeth, she hath also conceived a son in her old age, and this is the 6th month with her who was called barren. So Mary stayed with Elizabeth for the last 3 months of her pregnancy. And Mary abode with her about 3 months and returned to her own house. Now Elizabeth's full time came that she should be delivered, and she brought forth a son. What's a full time? This is what Wikipedia says. About 40 weeks. Now, working from the information about John's conception in the middle of the 3rd month, Sivan, and advancing 6 months, we arrive in the 9th month of Kislev for the time frame for the conception of Jesus. It is notable here that the first day of the Jewish festival of Hanukkah, the Festival of Lights, is celebrated on the 25th day of Kislev. And Jesus is called the light of the world. It's John 8:12, 9:5, and 12:46. This does not appear to be a mere coincidence. In the book of John, Hanukkah is called the Feast of Dedication. It's John 10:22. Hanukkah is an 8-day festival of rejoicing, celebrating deliverance from enemies by the relighting of the menorah in the rededicated temple. So this slide is showing 6 months is 177 days. So we're moving from Sivan the 16th or the 17th. That's the day, that's the week that Zacharias was on duty. And we're moving forward to 6 months when the angel came. And where do we wind up? Kislev 16th through the 27th. And I'm giving us a week there, time frame of somewhere in that week. None of this can be precise. We know that. Time, too much calendars has changed. In fact, if it says that it can be adjustable up to 30 days backwards and forwards from back in this time. So, but this is probably a really good close time frame. So we have the 43 is the 29 days plus the 14, leaving at the 14th. The 38 is the 29 days plus the 9 days. So that's your 2 columns there, which bring us at the very bottom the 16th of Kislev or the 22nd of Kislev. Am I making any sense? The 25th is our November and December. That was his conception. Not his birth, his conception. All right, here we can look at it a little bit further. So, the angel that appeared to Zacharias in the temple also indicated that John would be the expected Elias. Let's see. Yes. And let me go back to right there. Here we see the conception. But it is based on the birthday of John. Here is the birthday of John, doing 280 days, which is the 40 weeks, from when Zacharias left on Nisan the 16th. The Bible tells us immediately after his wife became pregnant. So that could be the 17th through the 14th. So we can count forward 280 days, and guess what? He's born on the 1st of Nisan. This is John the Baptist, somewhere between the 1st and the 6th. Now we talked about the festival. Is there a festival during this time? What is it? Nope. It's a feast. 7-day feast. I'm going to look at my notes to be sure I don't tell you wrong. It's the unleavened bread. And it's a 7-day feast. All right, let's go. Right there. This is Luke 1:17. And he shall go before him in the spirit and power of Elias to turn the hearts of the fathers to the children and the disobedient to the wisdom of the just, to make ready a people prepared for the Lord. Now then the feast of unleavened bread begins on the 14th day of the first month Nisan, and the 14th is a likely day for the circumcision of John the Baptist, the expected Elijah. It wasn't until 8 days later. The male child was always 8 days old before they did the circumcision. Now, Elijah means my God is Yahweh. And it's interesting too, they don't name the boys until they're circumcised. And that's proof in John 1:59, and I'll give you another one a little bit later of when they named Jesus. He was named by Mary on his day of circumcision. Since Jesus was conceived 6 months after John the Baptist, we have established a likely date for John's birth. We need only move 6 months further down the Jewish calendar to arrive at a likely date for the birth of Jesus. This takes us to the 9th day of the 7th month, Tishrei. And what we find on that date is the eve of Yom Kippur. This is a 280 day. Based on Kislev is 30 days. You add 5 because we believe the conception was on around the 25th of Kislev. So we add, there's 30 days in that month. So it's 30 days in Kislev. Add 5 to go from the 25th to the month per fire, and then just keep adding it up. And now you've got the likely day of Jesus was born. Tishrei. 8 days later, you have the circumcision. What is Tishrei? September through October. Now, Yah Kapan. Here's what this little holiday for the Jews is. It's the meaning of it. It means day in Hebrew. It comes from a root that means to atone, which is related to the biblical name of the covering of the ark. So Yom Kippur is usually expressed in English as the Day of Atonement. I was afraid you wouldn't be able to see that. This is our calendar for today, and the big letters there are our dates, but there's a little bitty small one there, and I guess I should have blowed it up. On the very bottom, you see reading from the 16th, 17th, and 18th, and the 19th. The 9th of Tishrei, it would be, to our date, was the 18th of this month, September 18th. All right, this describes what this slide here is the Festival of Tabernacles. It is a feast of the ingathering tradition. It's a biblical Jewish holiday celebrated on the 15th day of the 7th month, Tishrei. That's this month, September. Varies from late September to late October. During the existence of the Jewish temple, it was one of the 3 pilgrimage festivals on which the Israelites were commanded to perform a pilgrimage to the temple. Am I making better sense this time, or I still got everybody confused? The word Emmanuel, the name Emmanuel. Anybody know what that means? God is with us? Yes. Therefore the Lord himself shall give you a sign. Behold, a virgin shall conceive and bear a son, and shall call his name Emmanuel. Emmanuel means God with us. The Son of God had come to dwell with, or tabernacle on earth with his people. And the Word was made, in John 1:14, and the Word was made flesh and dwelt among us, and we beheld his glory, the glory as of the only begotten of the Father, full of grace and truth. In Luke 2:7 we read, And she brought forth her firstborn son, and wrapped him in swaddling clothes, and laid him in a manger, because there was no room for them in the inn. And there were in the same country shepherds abiding in the field, keeping watch over their flock by night. And lo, the angel of the Lord came upon them, and the glory of the Lord shone around about them, and they were sore afraid. And the angel said to them, Fear not, for behold, I bring you good tidings of great joy, which shall be to all people. For unto you is born this day in the city of David a Savior, which is Christ the Lord. Now, why was there no room in the inn? That's true. Yes. It was a tax season. Herod was calling everybody from their city had to go back to pay their taxes. But that wasn't all. It was also going on in Jerusalem. Now, Bethlehem is only 5 miles away. So if you had a large group of people, just about every place for gathering is going to be taken up. The feast of the Tabernacles also going on at the same time. So every room for miles around Jerusalem would already be taken by pilgrims. So all that Mary and Joseph could find for shelter was a stable. Now consider this also. During the Feast of Tabernacles, everyone was to live in a temporary booth. It's called Sukkot, as a memorial to Israel's pilgrimage out of Egypt. So the birth of Savior and what amounted to a temporary dwelling rather than a house signaled the coming deliverance of God's people from slavery to sin and their departing for the promised land. Also of note is the fact that the Feast of Tabernacles is an 8-day feast. That's Leviticus 23:36 and through 39. So it might be that one of the reasons that there was an 8 days, being 8 days is because an infant would be born during that time, and it would be 8 days before he could be circumcised. Just projecting that, I don't know for sure. But here, Luke 2:21, it says, And when 8 days were accomplished for the circumcision of the child, his name was called Jesus, which was so named of the angel, before he was conceived of the womb. So here again we have it, like it reads in John 1:59, the child is not actually named by the mother until the circumcision. So the infant Jesus would have been circumcised on the 8th and the last day of the Feast of Tabernacles, a Sabbath day. The Jews today consider this a separate festival from Tabernacles, and they call it Shemini Azaret. Unless you read that. That describes that holiday. Apologize, I got my notes all mixed up here. Well, I'm completely missing a page, so we'll have to wing this last end of it. Wrapping it up. I had a little more to say before we're going to wrap it up, but we're going to wrap it up. Here we go. Conception of John. Somewhere between the 16th and the 23rd. I really think it was probably the 17th. His day ended on the 16th. We don't know how far he had to travel. And he's probably pretty happy to see his wife. They'd been separated for 8 days. So I would say it's probably around the 17th. That's to us May through June. So all we got to do move forward from that date would be 40 weeks, birth of John, brings us to Nisan 1 through 6. So that's March through April for us. Notice so 8 days later, circumcision is Nisan 9 through 14. What happens on the 14th? The Feast of Unleavened Bread. This could be coincidental, you think? I doubt it. Conception of Jesus. Kislev, 16 through 22. That would be November through December. I actually think it's probably around the 25th, since that's the day they celebrate the Festival of Lights. Because that's the next line, Festival of Lights. The birth of Jesus, Tishrei the 9th, September through October. That's on the eve of Yom Kippur, Tishrei the 9th. The circumcision of Jesus brings Tishrei the 17th. The Feast of Tabernacles falls right in that. And then the very last on the 8th day, it would be the 23rd. So that is biblical. I don't know, I've never seen anybody try to prove the 25th as far as biblical. Have you? Now, I'm not saying that's precise. I'm not saying that's exactly accurate, but it's pretty close. And maybe about as close as we can get in today's time. But let's stand and sing our closing song. Let's see what. 202. Tell every kindred and every nation, tell it far and near. Earth's dark night will fade with the dawning. Jesus will soon appear. Hail him, the King of glory, slain. Tell the wondrous story. Jesus comes to reign. Nations again in strife and commotion, warnings by the way. Signs in the heavens, unerring omens, herald the glorious day. Hail him, the King of glory, once a lamb for sinners slain. Tell the wondrous story, Jesus comes to reign. Children of God, look up with rejoicing, shout and sing his praise. Blessed are they who, waiting and watching, look for the dawning rays. Hail him, the King of glory, once a lamb for sinners slain. Tell the wondrous story, Jesus comes to reign. Father in heaven, we're looking forward to being home with you where we can understand these things. But while we're here, we look to the Word and we study it and we get as close as we can. Now bless each one of us as we depart today. Give us a week that will be full of joy. Heal us from our sufferings, from our spiritual deficiencies, from our heartaches, and from our sorrows. Bring us back.